joining us. Richard was originally going to be joining the panel with NENA and Catherine, but his time and clashes got too complicated. So we're thrilled that you're here today. And we've invited Richard really to give us, I guess, an update on some of his work and to talk about the future of Australia's economy. The big focus, Richard, has been on thinking about the practical pathways to change systems, but also connect up the dots of the amazing on-the-ground projects going on. We've had about 100 people register for the conference. I think we've got about, I'll pretend it's 80 this morning. Could be a bit less, everyone slept in. Nah, it's all good. So without further ado, Richard, thanks for joining us. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And I'm getting
Richard.
I can. I'm getting a bit of echo back from you, so
okay,
maybe...
Yep, I'm going to go away. Callum's our sound man. I'm pointing at Callum. He will make it.
I reckon, yeah, if you mute at your end, but, you know, give me I'd love to take questions, so how long should I rant for, so that we've got a bit of time for questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Rant for 20, and then we'll have questions for 10. That was the plan, so...
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks, Michelle, and thanks for everything that you and others do at NENA. It's such important work that you do, and thanks everyone else for caring about these big issues, and for giving up your time and your opportunity to do other things to invest in them. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, I was keen to get up there. We couldn't quite make it work, but always very supportive of the work that NENA does. So thank you. Look, some of you will have heard me talk before. I'm going to kind of chuck a few big ideas and a few heresies out there, but then have time to talk about them in when we've got some questions. And I often come at this a bit differently to a lot of people. So by way of background, I'm an economist. I run a think tank called the Australia Institute. We do lots of work about the Australian economy. I'm pretty confident saying I've got a good idea about how mainstream economics works. I'm pretty confident saying I understand all the problems of mainstream economics when it comes to things like environmental issues and societal issues. And lest I come across as some economist who doesn't get it, I've worked on things like the Genuine Progress Indicator and measuring well-being for over 30 years now. I do get it. It's not what I'm going to focus on today, but I'll talk about why I don't focus on those things so much. Doesn't mean they're not important. It's just not where I put my focus these days. Similarly, we spend a lot of time talking about climate change and climate policy in Australia. I'm not trying to dismiss intellectually or politically other people's focus, but I'm going to talk in quite a traditional way about a bunch of economic and social issues. And the reason I'm going to focus on the things I focus on is I actually think that there is obviously a need to show people the world could be different, but actually someone has to take a sledgehammer to the status quo. And I spend more of my time with a sledgehammer in my hand than I do sitting stroking my chin planning a better future. Doesn't mean I'm hostile to people planning a better future, but if all we do is plan the better future, we're not going to stop the appalling present. And we need to do both. I work in the both. All right, so here we go. Australia is one of the richest countries in the world. There is no doubt about that. This is top secret information held on something called the internet. You can find it on the World Bank website or the IMF website or the OECD website. Australia is one of the richest countries in the world. We are one of the biggest economies in the world. And yes, it's true that China and America are much bigger than us. That's true. But if someone's 6'6", they're very tall, even if someone else is 7 foot. We are one of the biggest economies in the world. Depending on the exchange rate and the day of the week, we're the 13th or 14th biggest economy in the world. We have a small population, we have a giant continent, and we have what most countries think of as a giant economy. We are rich, we are globally significant, we are the world's third largest, or again, depending on the day of the week, third largest or second largest fossil fuel exporter in the world. Russia, Saudi Arabia 1, Russia 2, Australia 3, Increasingly, we're beating Russia in those stats. America's kind of surging up the charts, but we are one of the biggest fossil fuel exporters in the world. So, why am I talking about all this? Because the real skill of neoliberalism, and it's a skill, the people who thought up neoliberalism were smart and they won. The real skill of neoliberalism was to convince entire populations, entire populations of rich people that they were poor. And it's worked a treat in Australia. And even though we're one of the richest countries in the world, even though our economy is one of the biggest in the world and our population is one of the smallest in the world, we feel poor. And once we're trained to feel poor, it's really easy to divide and conquer. Once we're trained to feel poor, it's really easy to get progressives arguing about whether we should prioritise health or education or aged care or childcare or climate change or public transport or. Once you've actually convinced people that we're broke and we're resource constrained, it's really easy to get us all fighting amongst ourselves about what the priority should be, when I would argue the priority should be that we tax the bejesus out of companies that we wish weren't around, and if they threaten to say, well, if you tax us, I'll go away, we say, good, win-win. Where's the downside? So to give you an example of how generous we are in Australia, how outward-looking we are in Australia, how sympathetic to foreigners we are in Australia, more than half of the gas we export we give away for free. More than half of the gas we export we give away for free. And in Australia, the Australian government collects more revenue from HECS each year than we get from our petroleum resource rent tax. Now in Norway, they tax the bejesus out of their gas industry and give their kids free higher education. In Australia, we subsidise the fossil fuel industry and we charge our kids a fortune to go to uni. Now, this is why I work in the here and now. I'll start to talk about some abstract critiques of, you can't have continuous growth forever. I agree. We need better indicators of progress. I agree. We need to think about the environment in our community and our decision making. I agree. Tick, tick, tick. I'm with you all. But where I often disagree with people who share my concerns is that I don't think that it's an accident that for 30 years successive Labor and coalition governments accidentally subsidised the fossil fuel industry. I don't think it's a lack of data that led to that choice. I don't think it's a lack of a wellbeing framework that led to that choice. I don't think it's a lack of any form of evidence that led to that choice. I think it's simple. When people reveal themselves to you, believe them. The first thing the Albanese government did when elected in 2022 was sign off a $1.5 billion subsidy for a gas project in Middle Arm. This was not an accident, and they didn't accidentally forget to say it in the lead up to the 2022 election, and they didn't accidentally wait till after the 2025 election to improve the North West Shelf. It's not an accident that in their first term they reformed the petroleum resource rent tax in a way that it now collects less revenue than it used to. These aren't accidents, and the people making these choices are not silly and they're not stupid and they're not one report away from changing their mind. But unfortunately, Australian democracy being what it is, most people are getting enough to keep them happy. Most of the people who are unhappy don't really want to look into the abyss of just how crass and base and simple these problems are. And in turn, I don't think we're very effective at driving change. So my strategy for driving change is not to focus on better indicators of well-being anymore. My focus is not to talk about triple bottom lines anymore. I'm not dismissing the need to do that stuff. To be clear, I'm not. I think it's part of a solution. But I just don't think Madeline King is on the cusp of saying we don't need massive expansion in the gas industry and will change her mind if we put some data in front of her. So that's sort of big picture where I'm at. I'm not trying to say everyone there has to pick a team, but if you want to change the future, you have to engage in the present. Where you have to meet people where they're at, and people with enormous power in Australia are currently in the middle of an enormous fossil fuel expansion. The Northwest Shelf is not an aberration. There's more than 100 new fossil fuel projects seeking approval in Australia today. Now, let's flip to opportunities, and not only am I aware of the limitations of GDP, I'm also aware of modern monetary theory, I'm aware of Steve Keen's work, I'm a trained macroeconomist, I get all this stuff. In Australia, we have a political culture that revolves around a lack of money. Might be imagined, but it has political power. We live in a country that says it's poor, but literally spends $14 billion a year subsidising the fossil fuel industry, and literally gives more than half the gas we export away for free. So where I think there's huge political opportunities to drive significant social outcomes and environmental outcomes, while still staying in the orthodox domain, which frustrates people, but again, I don't feel the need to choose, is to just keep reminding people, whether they're from the Hanson right or the socialist left, that it's a bit strange that a country like Australia would give its gas away for free to foreign companies. Highlighting that and suggesting that we could tax that the way that Norway does, Qatar does, Saudi Arabia does, would mean that we could build a radically different country. It wouldn't be enough. We'd still have to solve other problems. But personally, I think if, and it's a big if, we took climate change seriously at a government level, I don't think this mob do, if we took climate change seriously, simply by taxing gas and simply by scrapping fossil fuel subsidies, we could easily fund, afford, whatever word doesn't upset people, a massive increase in expenditure on health, education, climate adaptation, investment in renewable energy, easily, like just by closing down subsidies and giving fossil fuels away, and stopping giving fossil fuels away. But we're not even kind of getting ambitious yet. According to the pinko lefties at the IMF and the OECD and the World Bank, Australia is one of the lowest tax countries in the developed world. One of the lowest tax countries in the developed world. And if Australia aspired just to be average, if we went from aiming to be at the bottom to aiming to be in the middle, if we just lifted our tax to GDP ratio to the middle, we'd collect an extra $130 billion a year. Right? So if you want to know how come they can afford to have nice things in Europe, and we can't afford to have them here, it's because we're at the bottom of the tax pack. Now, again, I haven't talked about any kind of fancy economic theory here. I'm just saying that because we choose to be one of the lowest tax countries in the developed world, we choose to spend less on public health, public education, public transport than pretty much every other democracy in the developed world. So, if we wanted to radically, and this is a theme I often focus on, change the shape of our economy, I focus on the shape of the economy more than the size. If we wanted to change the shape of our economy quite radically, well, we have all the tools to do that. Again, orthodox economics isn't enough, but you don't need any fancy new economics to say, could we stop giving gas away for free? There you go, there's 10 or 15 billion. Can we stop giving subsidies to fossil fuels? There's another 10 or 15 billion. Can we close capital gains tax concessions? There's an extra 20 billion. Can we increase the company tax rate? Right? There's so many simple things we could do that would just potentially drive us up to being average in the tax to GDP stakes. And then we could take that money and we could invest in the arts, we could invest in our people, we could invest in renewable energy, we could invest in climate adaptation, we could invest in our Pacific neighbours and helping them not only to thrive in this climate changed world, or survive, depending on which part of the Pacific we're talking about, but also just to actually improve peace and security in our region. And I would argue we can do that right now with the simplest, most obvious policy levers available. Now that doesn't mean we can't simultaneously put effort into asking bigger questions about what's the meaning of life and what's the meaning of the economy and what should we be aiming for and how should we measure progress towards it. That's fine. But when we're hurtling in the wrong direction, I choose to put a lot of effort into trying to pull the brakes on going in the wrong direction. Where we swing it around, where people want to take it, great, sign me up. That's an interesting and important conversation too. But my fear is that a lot of people spend so much time saying we're going in the wrong direction that they don't kind of pull on the levers to actually act as a brake on how rapidly we're hurtling in the wrong direction. Because in Australia today, right now, with a Labor government with a massive majority, we're still opening new gas, we're still opening new coal, we're still subsidising old coal and gas. We don't have a carbon price, right? Our roads are full of the biggest vehicles I've seen in my lifetime. The idea that we're doing everything we can to tackle climate change is sick. The suggestion that there's no more this government could do at a federal level is climate denial. All right, let's choose our words carefully here. According to the UN Secretary General, according to the International Energy Agency, according to the UNFCCC, a world that's tackling climate change doesn't need any new coal or any new gas. So UN, UNFCCC, International Energy Agency, a world that's tackling climate change doesn't need new coal and gas. In Australia, we deny that. Let's get the words right. We deny that. And we actually tell ourselves and the world that actually we need more gas and more coal to help the world lower emissions. Now, I'm not going to attempt to explain how that works because I don't know. It's called a lie. But we are science denying in Australia today. But this federal government simply says, but the coalition tell even bigger lies. The coalition of skeptics. Well, there's kind of an honesty in ignoring the science of climate change entirely. I don't know what happens when you can publish a climate risk assessment that says, this is what the climate risk assessment says, the risk for bushfires is going to decline this century because there won't be any large eucalypt forests left. Okay, so we are in a country where our own government is commissioning scientific advice that says the costs of climate change are catastrophic, but just in case people haven't read it carefully, what it also says, the risks of flood, the risk of hail, the risk of all sorts of things, of heat death through the roof. But bushfires will probably be less of a problem in Australia going forward because the heat waves that are coming and the fires that are coming in the next 20 or 25 years will actually just permanently destroy our large eucalypt forests, which means by the end of the century there won't be large eucalypt forests to have those crown fires that cause a lot of damage. So we live in a country where the government not only commissioned that report, but waves it around and says this is how serious it is, and then goes and opens new coal and gas and subsidises new coal and gas. So I might wrap it up there, Michelle. I'm not watching the clock, but it feels like that's about 20 minutes. But to be clear, we can't just have economic growth forever. I agree. Happy to talk about that. We should measure new indicators, but we've also got to engage in the danger of the here and now, which is our foot is on the accelerator, hurtling in the wrong direction.
Thank you, Richard, for utterly depressing everybody in the room. We're so proud of you. No, look, seriously, Richard, that is such a fantastic summary of the insanity of our current government and policy frameworks in this country. Now, my absolutely first question to you is, not only what can people do on the ground to keep the pressure on keeping fossil fuel in the ground. But what can organisations like NENA do, tiny, humble networks of people, in addition to the beautiful future we're already building on the ground? What can we do practically? Because this is not an economic issue, this is a political issue. And we were talking this morning, someone said to me, why do these people do this? Why? I said, imagine 10 mates in a room who know that they can make as much money as possible, and even if they're in government, probably go back and work for them later, and also they don't care about other people. This is a political problem. This is a culture of sickness in our government. What can we do?
Well, there's so much we can do, and there's so much room for improvement. And to be clear, you know, I'm an optimist at heart. We've caused a lot of climate change, but you know, I was well mentored by some of the best climate scientists in Australia, who 30 years ago said to me, Richard, no matter what happens, 2.5 degrees is better than 3.5 degrees, and every 0.1 makes a huge difference. So, you know, just to be crystal clear, we've already caused a lot of climate change. We're over 1 degree. We may well already be over 1.5 degrees, but you know, 1.9 is a lot better than 2, and 2 is a lot better than 2.1, and 2 is so much better than 3 that your children cannot thank you enough if you steer it away from 3. So, you know, unfortunately, the people we're playing against have been winning for decades by delay, right? They're not trying to persuade anyone, they just need to delay change. And it's worked really well. But here's the thing, if money and power were the only, well, money and corporate power were the only things that mattered in a democracy, we'd have never got anything. We wouldn't be sitting here today in a democracy having these conversations. Women didn't get the vote by asking nicely and waving reports. We didn't get tobacco advertising banned just by people waving reports. Apartheid didn't end, whaling didn't end, asbestos mining didn't end without power being confronted and losing. Now, the fossil fuel industry are particularly powerful, but the beautiful thing about foreign companies is they don't get a vote. So this is an entirely different talk, but if people want to Google some of our stuff at the Australia Institute on this, it's really important that everyone in the audience understands that in Australia there is no such thing as a safe seat anymore. There is no such thing as a safe seat. Every member of parliament is vulnerable now. Tony Abbott lost one of the Liberals' safest seats in 2019, Warringah. The Liberals went, oh, that'll never happen again. And then they lost McKellar and North Sydney and Wentworth and Goldstein and Cougar in 2022. Labor, who just had an alleged landslide victory, yeah, they won a record number of seats off a record low primary vote. Here in Canberra, the seat of Bean was one of the safest seats in the country. It's now held by less than 0.5%. The Labor seat of Fremantle was one of the safest seats in the country, now held by 0.4%. Labor won the Green seat of Melbourne with a very small majority. Labor went very close in a lot of once safe seats. So here's a hypothetical. Does anyone think that Labor would have won the seat of Melbourne off the Greens if they announced the Woodside decision before the election? No chance. Would Labor have lost Bean and Fremantle if they'd announced the Woodside result before the election? Of course they would have. Right, so the most dangerous thing in our democracy is people believing we can't make a difference. It's people believing that only wealth and power can influence who's in Parliament. That's what wealth and power want you to think. Look at the seat of Bradfield, where Nicolette Buller beat the Liberals by 8 votes in the end? Right, every vote matters, but tens of millions of Australians believe otherwise. So until we actually think our politicians should be scared of us, and if they won't change their policy, I will change my vote. But I won't just change my vote, I will ring them regularly. I will go into their office regularly and say, you better change or I will. Until we actually do that, the Labor Party and the Liberal Party will keep betting that climate's not really a vote-changing issue.
Thank you, Richard. We might take 5 minutes for questions from the audience. We've got the lovely Yolanda, armed and ready with her microphone. Would someone like to put their hand up? Because we've got a few, yeah. Yolanda, that lady in the white shirt, yeah. Callum, Richard will be able to hear through that mic. Good, I don't have to repeat it. Hang on, Richard, we're ready.
Hi, Richard.
Make it a question, no long statements, just a reminder, thank you.
It's actually, yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Richard. That was absolutely fantastic. Such a succinct summary. Do you have that recorded somewhere that I could share with other people? Because it's essential, can I say, without the
Every look on YouTube.
because it was
it's
just,
everywhere.
Question,
Please, love. Question,
okay.
please.
Well, that was a question. So the next question is, before coming to NENA, I was thinking of volunteering, helping out the Australian Democracy Network, who want to tidy up democracy. But from what you've just said, it seems like getting politicians, the right politicians in, is more advantageous than cleaning up the corruption in our current political system. Or which one should I put my energy into?
Thank you, great question.
Yeah, look, you put your energy wherever you want, but ultimately we have a House of Representatives and a Senate that makes the laws. And if you want to ignore that, that's risky. I think getting good people into that place and making everyone in that place scared that if they don't do the right thing, they won't stay in that place is crucial. And nothing that a citizens' assembly or any other group of people have thought up is going to happen if our House of Reps and Senate don't want it to happen. So I think it's really dangerous to ignore our actual democracy while planning a better one.
Thanks, Richard. Next question.
Thanks, Richard. Is there anyone in Canberra who understands the connection between growth, excessive energy use, and overshoot? Or
Yeah, of course. Lots of them, including the Treasurer, right? You're not quite thinking about what their job is. It's so easy to think that really smart people in positions of power are just slightly ignorant and accidentally doing these things. To win an election, you have to win a majority of the votes in your seat. To be promoted to cabinet, you have to have the support of your faction and your party, all right? These people are all responding to the pressures they're under. And as long as they're under far more pressure from the fossil fuel industry than they are from voters saying you better tackle climate change, they will come up with any rhetorical and political trick to stay on the course they're on. But they're not accidentally on it. They're not stupid. They're not accidentally doing these things. And while everyone thinks they're cynical about politics, when I say, well, what if they understand and just lie to your face? Everyone's like, oh, it can't be that simple. Well, it is.
Thank you, Richard. One more question.
Thanks, Richard. Love the work of the Australia Institute. Following on from that question and acknowledging what you just said, is there anything we can do within, longer political terms? Is there something, media ownership? What would be the things that you would say could change these politicians of ours?
Yeah, what's the silver bullet? There isn't one. It's a democracy. Change is supposed to be hard. There's 25 million people in Australia, more than. We're not all going to get our way. And if every day Parliament changed laws a lot, we'd be so busy changing things, we'd never implement things. So if you look at the agenda of the Australia Institute, we work on tax, we work on the labour market, we work on climate change, we work on accountability and democracy, we work on foreign policy. Right, and we're just one organisation. Why do you think we work across so many things? Because there's not one thing. So which one thing you, one person, want to work on, that's okay, whatever your combination of your passion and your strategy is. But to be clear, there's not a lever that's hiding in a room that if we just go pull it, we'll win. This is hard grind. It took decades for women to win the vote. It took decades for the ANC to end apartheid. The idea that the fossil fuel industry is on the brink of collapse once we get the right strategy, no. It's so much harder than that. Doesn't mean we're not making progress. 10 years ago, people thought the gas industry paid a lot of tax. No one thinks that anymore. But we haven't got to the tax them yet. And by the way, taxing them's not enough. But making the gas industry fight the idea they should pay tax makes it easier for Australians to understand, well, why are we subsidising them? Why are we having them? Right? So it's all going to take time. I hate to tell you. But if we believe that it'll never happen, they'll win. If we believe we'll fix it tomorrow, they'll win. It's just hard work on lots of fronts.
Thank you so much, Richard. I personally could listen to you talk all day, but you've got to get back into your flat again. And
No, I'm in now.
I was going to say wake up the kids again, but we would love to say a huge thank you. Can everyone just give a big round of applause? Make it loud. We've been going on. Richard, thanks so much, and we'll try to get you into some webinars next year so we can continue to have your voice telling folks about the reality of our current system. So, Richard Dennis, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks everyone. And just very quickly, all of our work, free online, webinars, podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, it's everywhere. If you look for it, you couldn't not find it.
No. And Richard, thank you for all your hard work over the decades. Honestly, even in the 10 years that you and I have been kind of engaging since the NENA thing, it's really inspiring to see you continue to be a voice of honesty in a space that's very confusing for most of us. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
See you, Maggie. All right. So I'm just going to fiddle with some buttons now and turn